we had everything we needed. I never did without. And I remember, I don't know if it was Sears or Toys R Us. I think it was Toys R Us, but they had those big books that would be mailed out for Christmas. And I would circle all the things I wanted. And I don't know how he did it, but he got most of those things, if not all. But those books, I looked forward to that. And that was such an early part of my life. But I always would say, like, my dad did his best. He continues doing his best. He's stubborn in many ways, but we are all the Courreges family, are a bunch of stubborn people. He's a former Marine officer during Vietnam. If you Google my name, likely you're going to see him because we share the same name. I'm the third. Very strong background in scouting. That was something that he and I did together. My favorite memories were going to like Philmont, Northern Tier with him, going on scout camps and stuff. So I've been doing that with my son on our scouting. I took a week off earlier this summer to go to a scout camp here in Texas and be there. So I know those memories will last for my son because they lasted for me. He set a high bar on how to be there for the family, right?
Wayne Courreges. What a great last name. Wayne, how you doing today, man?
I'm good, Kenneth. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for being on the Invested Fathers. Wayne, I always just like to get out of the gate saying, what's your business and how's it going?
Yeah, we are active real estate investors and developers focused in Central Texas. I am the managing principal of CREI Partners. We started our company back in 2019. Things were booming. Things were great in the real estate market. And that wasn't really the start of my real estate career. I actually bought my first single family home when I was 19 years old in the Marine Corps in 29 Palms, California, and then served from 2003 to 2007. Got out of the Marine Corps in 2007 and joined CBRE, a well-known, solid professional commercial real estate company that spanned 16 years. So I was with them heavily on the property management, asset management side. And then in 2019, so I was still with CBRE at that time, but in 2019, sort of having that come to Jesus with myself of, was this a good time to go out on my own? Because in my mind, I'm like, I've got time to rebound. Like any entrepreneur is like, hey, I've been in this company. But because I had kids and this is a family podcast, I was like, hey, I got responsibility. I got a wife. So I'm going to do it the right way, not just give my 2-week notice and leave. And I honestly loved what I was doing. It was a really great career with CBRE, great team members. And so I was like, why don't I start a business that doesn't compete with CBRE? And one of the things they weren't really managing or developing is multifamily. So I got into multifamily investing just by not competing with my day job. So I can do both. And so as I started diving into multifamily, I got really passionate about the multifamily. At the end of the day, everybody needs a place to live, et cetera. Speed it up to today, we've got about 38 million assets under management. And I'm proud of that number because the bulk of that is actually truly asset managed under us. We've raised capital, but we're running the day-to-day operations. And that's one of the differentiators for our shop is that we are extremely hands-on leading the asset management of it. We've got 128 units that by the time this publishes, we would have purchased another 128 units in Houston. We've got a development that's in process through rezoning in the city of Bryan here in Texas. We're looking at buying land in Temple, Texas for another storage development. And so I say all that really not to pat myself on the back, but more so like we are, regardless of the cycle, I said that 2019, 2022, like that was boom market, real estate. Real estate has ups and downs, and this is just sort of who we are. We are active buyers, investors, developers, even in tough times. And we are in tough times right now. That's a little bit about us and what we're doing.
Man, that had a lot packed in there, Wayne. Thank you for sharing it. No,
Yeah.
that's awesome. And I'm learning about the values that you have, even to the point, like you said, of I'm proud of that number of 38 million assets under management. I feel like in this space of real estate, you start talking to enough people, and that's such a measuring stick. Assets under management, like how great are you? And it's so easy to make that number just look so big because you can partner with different people and I have $500 million but you've highlighted the importance of we want to take care of what we're touching so much that like our hands-on touch needs to be a certain level of control. have you been burned in the past by that, or is that just something where it's just
No, I think it's just in my DNA, my background. One, yeah, whole life outside the Marine Corps has been commercial real estate. I got the
okay?
bug, honestly, in real estate in high school. I wish, Kenny, I could just turn off the asset manager in me. I wish I could just be like, I'm just going to raise capital and find deals and partner with great people because that's a great business plan. And if you interview and you're doing that for your passive investors of finding solid operators, but it just the reality is probably a little bit of my control freak of controlling things and stuff, and also the passion I have for real estate. So there's plus and minuses for lead sponsors or real estate investors is because you can only take on so much. So if you're partnering with other groups that you've interviewed and you've built relationships with and they've track record, you can scale your business on an investment side for your investors a lot faster than even what we can because we're only doing 2 or 3 deals a year because we're so involved, right? And we've got team members and such, but it's a much slower build up process because our time is taken into the weeds, which say it's easy to get a deal closed, even in this environment with capital. Like capital is tough. So by me saying that's like tongue in cheek, it is tough to close a deal.
Mhm.
But compared to actually operating a deal, especially in multifamily, when things change and courts become more liberal and things, taxes and insurance and inflation and dealing with people, managing assets, I say the operation of the property is a lot harder.
Mhm.
And that's just what I've done my whole career and what I've enjoyed. You get to experience the full life cycle of the property, right? When you're involved,
Mhm.
when you're seeing the ups and downs, you appreciate the wins a lot more
Mhm.
because sometimes you feel banged up along the way.
I recently toured a property in Kansas City, and I'm in Greenville, South Carolina, so that was a big deal to go and see what does it take to buy this property, value add it, and get everyone rented. And I got to see a little more firsthand of what that operations hat, that management hat looked like because I was with the operations manager, the asset manager, and this property that we looked at was already functioning, but they told us like what it took to get there. So, in my opinion, you're describing the role that you're describing, I truly believe is the hardest role. In all of there's the underwriting, there's the deal finding, there's the relationship part of it, there's the money part of it. But the
Yeah.
people that are getting the work done on the property, managing the property, you need an all-star in that seat. Or every
Absolutely.
seat matters. But hats off to you,
And
Wayne, for taking that
well,
on.
yeah, and it starts, Kenny, with property. Like for us, you've got to determine, like we're talking as active investors here, not on the
Mhm.
passive side. On the active side, you're saying like, okay, am I going to manage these properties myself or am I going to third party manage? Now, for our storage facilities, we manage in house. Most of the reason behind that is because technology runs storage, like leasing, key codes. You don't pay, it deactivates your code. It's much more streamlined. There's no emotions to it.
Mhm.
You don't pay your rent after 30 days. We take over the unit. And I find that a lot easier to manage. But on the multifamily side, it takes special. In my mind, that is very difficult because you're dealing with emotions. You're dealing with someone's home. We find really good property management companies in our markets.
Mhm.
And they talk about being burned. I've been burned by a property management company that I thought was top notch because they had thousands of doors. But what I realized, Kenny, was that I was a small piece in their thousands of doors. So when I would call and ask for help, they're like, I got 20 I'm calling a regional. I got 20 property. He's throwing that in my face as a client. I got 20 other properties that I'm overseeing. I don't have time. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So once you go through that and you've been burned, and you find companies that align with your values and stuff, then it's a weekly call. I'm not trying to downgrade what I do,
No, no.
but I'm just straight up like Wednesdays are our asset management calls. I get on calls with every property has 30 minutes, typically 30 minutes. The property management team presents collections, status updates, projects, and they're weekly and they stay weekly, even on properties that are 100% collected, 100% leased. I still do it because if you do once a month, it's too late to shift the boat. Yesterday, I have on one of my properties, I got 2 units currently vacant, and I've got another 2 on notice. I see 2 today that are vacant, but really I've got 4 that we need to lease up. So by being nimble and being like, hey, we're doing these weekly calls. What do we need to do on concessions? What do we need to do rents? Is there anything we need to do at all? Are we listening to the property manager and hearing their confidence of the market? So that's the asset management role. The asset manager role on my side too is to be like 15,000 high in the air. Hey, how are things going? I've got a property, they got an insurance quote today that's higher than what I anticipated. So we're going out to bid and all. But when you get that insurance quote and it's higher than you look at, you have to reforecast. So I had a spreadsheet, I have a pro forma, and I retitled that pro forma a reforecast. Like, okay, by doing this, where do we hit on our returns now? And what other levers now do we need to push? Property managers aren't going to do that boots on the ground. They're focused collections, they're tactical, they're in the trenches. The commanders, the officers in the background, put in military terms, like they got to be strategic. And you got to look at the whole picture, and you got to be connected to the people that are, like I said, in the trenches. It's tough, but I would say the multifamily property manager, you want to listen, third party property manager, you're really in the thick of things. So
We're going to switch focus now. I think you've given our audience awesome information on just where your level of competency and what you've done in the business world has done for you. You've mentioned the kids, the wife, the Marines. You have the dad hat on. How old are your kids today?
So my oldest is 12, boy, Hunter. And then I've got Lily, who is 11, and Emma, who's 9.
Okay.
You know,
So there was like 3 years there where life started changing for you,
yeah.
I would guess.
It was a lot going on, and my wife did amazing at, I know it's a dad's podcast, but the mom did most of the work.
No. This is a dad podcast about moms. Let's just be honest.
Yeah,
we love our wives and the moms of the children. Okay, let's just talk about that. So mom seemed like your wife was doing a lot of work, maybe early on when the kids were young.
It's a team. I'll tell you, I know we want to start probably back then, but even this week, school started yesterday for us. So we're doing this podcast on the 15th. So yesterday, the 14th of August, 3 kids, one's in football. He got out of school at 4:30. One's in cheerleading. She got out at 5:30. And then my youngest got out at 3:30. And I'm calling my wife like, okay, who's doing what? It's like team approach, because I could either I'm full-time investor, entrepreneur guy. I could do the 3:30. I could do the 4:30, do the 5:30. And so she was like, I'll do the 3:30 and 4:30 if you want to get the 5:30. And so that's the life we've had. And it's almost been like that for, all these years. It's been a blessing, because when I worked for CBRE in Washington, D.C., the cost of living in DC was really expensive. And so we needed both incomes to really support what I called a vertical trailer. It was like a townhouse, like a row home. I called it a vertical trailer. It was still $500,000. It was just insane. And you needed both people working to survive in that DC area. And then when I got the opportunity to come to Houston with CBRE and manage a high-rise office building, it allowed us to, because it was much different cost of living, it allowed us to have my wife stay home and focus on what she wanted to do. It was her decision ultimately. And so she stayed home, and I had obviously went to work and came home, and I supported however I could at night, but the screaming and the stuff that happens early on, we're past that stage. So thank goodness. But if you're still if you're listening and you're in that stage of screaming and crying and everybody's crying, including you and your wife, whatever, it's like, it does get better. It gets more fun. Last year we went to London, did our first international trip. We just got back from Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and the kids, they're self-sufficient. They brush their own teeth. They wipe their own butt. Like everything is sufficient. It's nice. They can talk. They can communicate. Those are things that it makes being a dad a lot more fun when you're doing things that they enjoy.
I have a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old. I'm still wiping butts. I'm a big believer in just enjoy where you're at now.
100%.
And there's always the longing to, I'd love to just sleep through the night, one night, please. But I actually took a picture. My daughter wakes up at, 2 a.m. and she likes to put her hand out through the crib and hold our finger. And you're just dead tired, and you're just like, please just go back to sleep. But I know I ended up miss a little bit of that. Just little hand, big finger kind of.
Well, even like last week, we were at Dollywood, and I was holding Emma's hand. She's the 9-year-old a lot because it was busy and stuff. And really because she lets me.
Mhm.
Like my middle one, 11-year-old, she won't let me hold her hand. I can barely get a hug from her now. So I even told her, I'm like, I'm enjoying this while it lasts because I know you're not always going to want to hold dad's hand. You do have to just cherish those moments because, like this morning, just be very transparent and real with you. Like it was a rough morning. School started this morning. We're coming off a summer where the kids were being kids. There was no waking up at 6 in the morning. We didn't really have to wake up at 6 in the morning either. But now we're waking up 6. So I woke up all 3 kids at 6 this morning to get them showered up and stuff. Because last night our water main broke. So water was going everywhere. I had to have a plumber, so they didn't get to take showers last night. So this morning I'm waking them up a little early so they can take showers. And I won't say which daughter, but one of my daughters is just so slow and we're going to be late. And so I didn't really have a good dad start of the moment. My Marine went probably a little too much in the yelling, but that's just life, man. Last week we were in Gatlinburg being a great dad. And today I'm like, man, I totally failed and screwed that up. But but hopefully tomorrow we're going to leave at 7:15 when we need to leave so we can get them on time. We do our best. I guess that's my point. We do our best. We're going to have days where we're like good dads, and we're going to have days where like we're not so good. But honestly, that measure of not so good is like my wife's dad, who she doesn't even know. Like there was no relationship at all. Like she's never met him.
Yeah.
When you look at it from a holistic standpoint, I had a bad morning, but yesterday I picked up my daughter at 5:30. I drop them off at school. Even if you're not able to do that as much of that, because some dads can't because of the hours they work, being there when you can for the games and on the weekends, I think it's important. And we just got to lower the expectation that we don't have to be a perfect dad to make our kids love us.
Yeah. I can only speak from my experience in light of the 3-year-old and 7-year-old. I just turned 8 last week. But I think there's so much that we want to be able to give this like perfect childhood memory, this rather the experiences or the gift, the birthday. We had a birthday last week. So my wife and I are talking about all the presents that we need to buy. And I'm like, I know he's not going to play with this after a week. So I guess where I'm landing here is those experiences, the consistency, like the Gatlinburg trip, those things I would say are what's going to carry through. Let me switch to this thought. You mentioned your wife's dad being low bar. I feel like we can't help but compare ourselves to our dads. What was it like with your dad, and how did that go?
Yeah, no, my dad is he was a fantastic dad. We had some rough early years family wise, and many dads, when things get tough in a family, some of them can't handle it and so they leave, and some stick by it. And he was one of those dads that stuck by it. My biological mother wasn't the best of moms. She had her own struggles, and who I call my mom, my stepmom, my mom. I view her as my mom. But before she came along, my dad, we were living in a 1-bedroom apartment. He did so much. Like there was this lady who I call Grandma Thelma. It was a trailer home, but Grandma Thelma took us in while Dad was working, and my dad would pick us up, and we had everything we needed. I never did without. And I remember, I don't know if it was Sears or Toys R Us. I think it was Toys R Us, but they had those big books that would be mailed out for Christmas. And I would circle all the things I wanted. And I don't know how he did it, but he got most of those things, if not all. But those books, I looked forward to that. And that was such an early part of my life. The majority of my life, really, my stepmom, who I view as my mom, life changed drastically once she got in the picture. But I always would say, like, my dad did his best. He continues doing his best. He's stubborn in many ways, but we are all the Courreges family, are a bunch of stubborn people. He's a former Marine officer during Vietnam. If you Google my name, likely you're going to see him because we share the same name. I'm the third. Very strong background in scouting. That was something that he and I did together. My favorite memories were going to like Philmont, Northern Tier with him, going on scout camps and stuff. So I've been doing that with my son on our scouting. I took a week off earlier this summer to go to a scout camp here in Texas and be there. So I know those memories will last for my son because they lasted for me. he set a high bar on how to be there for the family, right? And I think there's things that I'm doing differently. One of my bosses told me you take tools from different people. You have a tool bag of things you want to keep, good tools, and you have tools that you just want to throw away, right? So no dad's perfect, but I think generation after generation in general, there are good things happening, and we do that because we take tools from the people we like growing up, and then we try to change the other tools as when we get in that position of fatherhood or whatever it is, being a husband, et cetera. And we just do our best. We're going to have good days and we're going to have mess ups, and that's life.
I love the stories, the Toys R Us catalog, like that stands out in your mind. The scouting, I'm sure there's just multiple things you can remember, hiking or bad is I don't know enough about scouting to maybe ask
Yeah.
good comparisons there.
I was an Eagle Scout. So I did all
Okay.
up to
Wow.
to
No,
the
that's
pinnacle.
awesome.
Yeah.
Could you share a story with, I want to know, okay, so we know more about your background now. You're a dad today. You have a 12-year-old boy.
12-year-old boy.
You mentioned like there's things that it's early in the morning and they got to get out of bed and they're being slow and you better get out of that bathroom right now or I'm going in there, whatever it is. But how are you instilling the things that matter to you that are important with your kids? Maybe give me some stories of like how you're doing that.
Yeah, and it's one of those things I always felt like you could do better, do more service events, go to church more often, those things. I try to teach work ethic as much as I can. My son, we own a storage facility through our partners here in Bryan, Texas. And so my son cleaning out units, like he's with me cleaning out units. And I'm just teaching him like no job is too, I own the facility, but yet I'm the guy in here cleaning things out and there's just no job too small. I learned that with CBRE and property management. Like, if the janitorial team needed help that night as a property manager or somebody, like I help. Like there was nights where I literally was taking trash out of desk by desks and offices because we didn't have enough janitors. But at the end of the day, like I didn't want to hear the complaints the next morning from the people in the offices. So yeah, I'm gonna step up and I'm gonna help, and it is what it is. So I'm trying to instill that with kids. Now each kid is completely different. Like my Lily, she is gung-ho on learning and trying to excel in school. And she keeps her room cleaned and she's just very organized and she's on it. And then my Emma, she's very much more athletic, like gymnastics, and her work ethic is maybe not as much school, but achieving physical things. And then my son, like if he can memorize math and such as well as he does football cards, he will be extremely gifted. They're all different in their own thing. So you're trying to figure out, for my son, for example, he will not be a good person to work a 9 to 5. He may start that in the beginning, but I'll give you an example of what he can do. Like this summer, went to summer camp. There's merit badges. You go to each merit badge, like every hour you switch to a merit badge. There's a snack shop, like scouts can go in and buy ice cream and stuff. He went in and I gave him money. I didn't know what he was going to buy, but he bought a full jug of pickles. It probably 15 or 20 pickles. And the guy behind the counter he just thought this kid wants pickles. Hunter took that bucket of pickles, and I've never taught him this. This is like a natural instinct of this kid. He's always been this way. He went to every merit badge with pickles. Each one of those pickles cost $1 at the snack shop. He sold them for $2 at the merit badge. And he comes back to camp and I'm hearing about this. I'm like, damn, that is awesome. Good for you. Like encouraging that entrepreneurship, the sales mentality. I'm like, that kid. And I told teachers prior years, because he's not going to be the A student, like as much as I want him to be. He will be when it's football cards or selling pickles. But I'm like, I told his teachers a couple years ago or last year, I can't remember which. I was like, this kid is not going to work for somebody. This kid is going to be having people work for him because he's so entrepreneurial. And I'm like, we need to focus and lift up that for him. Now, Lily, she's going to hopefully take over my real estate business. She's the one who actually likes real estate. She goes with me to Lafayette, to Houston. Like she's picked that up. And she's also the one who's more focused on school. Who's not to say in high school they all change on their stuff, but I'm just saying today they're all different. And then my Emma, like the more I can get her in gymnastics, the more I can push her to achieve her goals and dreams. She's going to do whatever she wants to do in life. Like everyone, even though you try to instill values, you can't just do a blanket values on all three because they all naturally already have certain values and certain traits.
Mhm.
So you have to adjust and be like, hey, how do I build up on something you're already really good at? Stop worrying about the things that maybe not so good, but worry about the things like this is what's going to be your differentiator.
Yeah, I love it. The idea of these kids are different. They don't need the same thing, the same pill. Can't go to all three of them. They're just not motivated the same way. And they have different dreams and aspirations. And I think makes sense, right? Like I'm, I'd say very different from my siblings. And then my kids, they couldn't be more opposite. We have our gentle giant who's just big and obedient and just and sweet. And then we have our firecracker girl who is just like running around with a knife, jumping off of beds and who knows what.
Yeah. And I told one of the teachers about my Emma. She has her own personality, but out of the womb, she was like, I do what I want. And if you mess with me, I'm gonna fight back. And if you disrespect me, that's just who she is. Now we try to like calm her. Hey, you probably shouldn't have talked back to the teacher like the way you did. Like, and then I told the principal, there was one time, there's another story. It was the first year at this private school that we went to, and we love the school, we still go to it. But sometimes private schools, the kids have to form a certain way. And Emma, she is stubborn and she wants respect. And those are the things like she just was born with. And so we were all in this room, a bunch of all women and me as dad. So my wife was there and then all the other teachers were women. And I just said it, and I hope I don't become offensive on this podcast or anything, but I was like, women want independent women. They want women who can speak for themselves and stand up for themselves. I'm like, you got that. And then 8-year-old, or she was like 7 years old. I was like, like a 7-year-old body, all the things that you want women to be, that's her. So you got to like, she's not in your mold. She's not going to always say yes. Like you have to, they need to realize she's who she is. And she was out of the womb that way. There's no fixing that. Like she has a fire in her. So how do you, as a teacher, how do you adjust your ways? We're realizing like not all the kids are going to be the same. Adjust. Now, I want my kids to be respectful. I want them to, we teach them that they are who they are in the core from birth. I really believe it's hard to change personality like that. And I think that really, when I said that, I probably offended one of the teachers or somebody but I'm like, I really think it helped because ever since then, like she's excelled in that school and I don't get calls every other, week or whatever. Like she did something. It's build her up and be nice to her. She'll be nice to you type thing. So.
No, I think there's a truth, I think, in the way you parent is going to be different than the way I parent. But here's that we're recognizing their skill sets. We're recognizing how they're wired. You said even from the womb, there was a sense of this is how I'm going to do it. And I face this with my Daphne, our 3-year-old. I am working so hard to get her to say please. Anytime she asks a question, I'll ignore her until she says please. But then she started to pick up on, oh, please, Daddy. She is so, I need this. And Moses never said anything. He was just quiet. Like we just put something in front of him and he smiled. Just that idea of we're learning what they need. We're helping them there. There's a level of respect everyone needs to have toward this person. Let me, given this in different ways, but a piece of advice for dads, maybe even in light of having an outspoken child. Is it Emma? Is she the outspoken one?
Yeah, she's outspoken.
Lessons learned or a tip or trick?
One of the things, it's something that I was at a mastermind a couple months ago, and one of the guys was talking about how he does like one-on-one day trips or like afternoons or weekend getaways. I am not good at that because it's hard because I always feel like you're not allocating time equally to everybody. Say if I got Emma or Lily Hunter, it's easier to feel like you're doing more with your time when they're all three with you. But in reality, you're trying to spend more one-on-one time. So like it resonated with me because I've been doing that, but I haven't really thought of it the way that he presented itself. We're season ticket holders to the Houston Texans football team. We bought those tickets when they were awful. Like the seats we bought were hundreds of dollars. Now they're a lot more because they've gotten good all of a sudden. But I only have 2 tickets. Saturday, it's a preseason game. I think the Giants are coming in, and Emma and I are going to go to that game. And then the next game, Lily, and the next game, Hunter. So we rotate. That's my one-on-one thing. And then we've got a boating club membership. We don't own a boat, but part of this boating club, and we go out boating. Those are 2 things. And the third thing is camping. So those are 3 things that like I try to do, maybe not all one-on-one, but try to have, that time as a family. But the Texans for me is that one-on-one. So I would say from a suggestion is just find that one-on-one time, because I do agree with the guy who spoke at the mastermind. Like that time it goes quick. If you do one trip a year and your kid's already, you said 8, that's really only 10 trips potentially. You start thinking, and really maybe less, because they'll probably be busy in the summers or want to be hanging out with their friends and stuff. So I think that's advice that I want to keep playing to myself, of just having those one-offs. And it could be like Emma, there was days where I would just take her ice skating. We would go ice skating together. With Lily, I took her to Six Flags one day, and I don't do enough of that. I need to remind myself like, hey, we're all busy, but it's important to take those times. And then encourage your wives to do that same thing. Give your wife a break so she can have those one-on-ones, especially when you have multiple kids, because you're just surviving. When you have 3 kids pulling you in a different direction. Kenny, this week, Tuesday, my wife, so school was yesterday. Tuesday, they had to go to school to meet teachers, but also get uniforms. I can't imagine how stressful it was for her. And I even told her, I was like, you were a super mom today. Uniforms for 3 kids, and the shirts, they all like, even though it says a small, they could be a large. Like they're all over the place. And she did it. And she joked with me, and one of the parents only had 1 child. And she was like, oh, it was so nice to like how they were just so, oh, let's try, like their survival is a lot different than hers with 3. And I'm not trying to diminish anybody's thing, but it's like when you've got 3, you're like, there's no man on man. There's not even, you're like in zone defense constantly. And so having those one-on-ones is important, and something that I'm trying to remind myself to do more often too.
Thank you for promoting, number one, the role of our wives in our success. Invested fathers have our, breadwinner hat, or leader of the household hat, or strong male influence hat, but we are greatly in need of our wives to do all of that they do. So thank you for saying that. And then I love that tip of just, if you look at the year, what does the year consist of? If I said, hey, how did your year go last year? There might be a few things that come up in your mind, and I'd love for them to be associated with, if I'm really thinking about it, we went to that game and we saw this thing, and it's experience with our kids.
I love what you just said there about the calendar. I was at another mastermind, and have you heard of the Big Ass Calendar?
Yes, I was at that. Yes,
I'm like,
yes,
I have bought it 2 years in a row. I'm not using it. I bought it, but I haven't put it up on my wall. But it color coordinates. So you start looking at a year in advance, and you put things that are like vacation or personal goals, things that you want to accomplish in the year. And then as you go along, you're tracking that calendar, and it's in your face. Then when at the end of it, you fold it up and you have it. I've bought it for the last 2 years. I'm looking around to see if I have it in this office. I don't. It rolled up. I know I didn't have it up on the wall, but the idea of it is good because you can visualize, or at least plan out. And so I love what you're saying with that, where you're just like, if you're more thoughtful and looking back, oh, I did all this in this year. And it was a good visual. I don't really care so much for the name of it, but that was the name of the calendar if someone's Googling it.
This is Jesse Itzler. I think he's the one that started it. He spoke at the conference, and it was all about basically being very intentional about your time with doing what matters. As they say, the days are long and the years are short. It's hard to get up in the morning, picking up the kids, picking out the uniforms. It's a long day today, but when you look back, the years just go so quickly. Wayne, thanks for everything you've talked about today. Invested Fathers is a podcast, and I'm sure we could have talked way more in depth on a lot of the things you said, but you've given us a lot of helpful information, and hopefully just the reminders, as you said, of what are we doing that matters, and can we set aside some time to do those things, specifically with our kids. If our listeners wanted to see more about what you're doing, love the self-storage conversations, multifamily, you're growing smart, how could they track you?
Yeah, I think if you want a general overview of our company and the resources of learning how to invest, go to CREIPartners.com. I love to have one-on-one calls. It's something I'm passionate about. So just shoot me an email, wayne@CREIPartners.com. I'll send you a Calendly link and we can have a one-on-one conversation and build the relationships. Kenny, thank you for doing this podcast. We enjoyed getting to know you before and then obviously during this, and let's keep the relationship going.
Sounds good, Wayne.
Appreciate you.